For those of you who don't know, Yesh Tikva is an online community of Jewish women and men who are going through or went through fertility treatments. It came about because of one woman's desire to take a break from her failing pregnancy attempts and create a positive space where Jewish individuals could anonymously gain support and strength from one another. After only 2 years, we have given infertility a voice within the Jewish community and no longer just provide support, but also educate others about infertility in order to try and remove the stigma and create a more sensitive Jewish community. And by listening to this, you are helping to do just that. According to the CDC's National Survey of Family Growth, 1 in 8 couples have trouble getting pregnant or sustaining a pregnancy. This means that you probably know someone who falls into this category. And if you don't think you know someone, listen to my personal story and then you will know me. And after this, you'll be able to say, my friend Ellie struggled, because you know me in a deep way, and I believe that by talking about infertility, you can gain knowledge, sympathy, and empathy, and maybe a tiny nugget of my tale can help you help others. There is a notion out there that infertility means that there is something flawed in the couple, that it is something to be ashamed of, especially in our world, where a family is the center of our religion. There are many couples I've encountered who are still not ready to tell their stories publicly, even though some are already mothers and seemingly on the other side. In addition, what I've learned from the various phone calls women around the world is that every journey is different. Every couple is different. There is no clear-cut, flawless formula on how to talk to someone going through the process, since personalities are diverse. For example, I'm sure you've heard of the segula of carrying in a baby boy at his breast and being a kvater. Well, when I was struggling to have kids, I was front and center begging my friends to be their kvater. However, I found out in subsequent conversations with various women that some would be insulted or even ashamed. They didn't want people to know, didn't want people to look at them, didn't want anyone assuming that there was something chas v'shalom wrong with them. Infertility is a very tricky and sensitive topic, even though you try and simply want to show others that you care. So I'm not able to give you all the answers on how to help your daughters, sisters, friends through this process, but rather my goal is to try and help you understand through my personal journey what I went through on the road through various assisted reproductive technologies. I've been called brave and strong for being able to describe my path to parenthood, but I hope that by sharing my story, those people can feel that they are not alone, and couples with children, grandparents, and even singles can understand a modicum of the pain and pressure of trying to have a child in our community. Maybe after this you can gain a sensitivity to those suffering in silence when they are unknowingly seated at your Shabbos table, admiring your family photos, or sitting next to you in shul with tears in their eyes during Kol Na'arim, or even hearing mazel tovs on birth, and notice your glances at their flat bellies, or even when they walk down the street and see someone pushing a stroller. Most people really don't appreciate what a husband and wife go through when there is a problem getting pregnant. Many people just assume, oh, it can be fixed with IVF. But there is so much more, and I tackled a number of these hurdles, so I hope after this your awareness and sensitivity will grow. When I first got married almost 10 years ago at the age of 31, I assumed that since it took me so long to find my husband, that Hashem would have pity on me and we would get pregnant fairly quickly after we started trying. Unfortunately, this was not the case. Almost immediately, I went to search out the best doctors to see if there was a problem with me or even my husband. At the time, we were living on the Upper West Side, and I went for my consult at Cornell. My husband and I went through a battery of tests, including some painful procedures. But after all that, it seemed that we were generally good with us. Good news, right? Well, when one is diagnosed with unexplained infertility, they try different protocols to get you pregnant and see what works. Step 1 for me was something called an IUI, an intrauterine insemination. I would be required to come in on day 3 of my cycle, get an ultrasound of my ovaries, and take some blood work, and if all was okay, I could start injecting myself with 2 shots at night, and then come in at 5 a.m. for blood and ultrasound to see how my body was responding. You do this for about 10 to 12 days. Sounds difficult, right? People always ask me how I dealt with that. Well, when you and your husband want a family so badly, all this seems like nothing as long as the end result works. So I patiently waited for my next cycle to come, and we did exactly what we were told. Every night my husband would inject me with a needle. I'm a strong woman who could have physically injected myself, but I wanted my husband to feel a part of the process since we were in it together, and he did. And every other morning at 5 a.m. I would go to the office to be one of the first of about 100 women or more who would come in for daily monitoring so that I could make it to work on time without anyone being the wiser of my quest. Once the eggs were the right size, I would have to take a shot at a very specific time to trigger ovulation and be back in the doctor's office exactly 12 hours later for the IUI. You had to be medoctic in your timing and dosages throughout this process in order for it to work. One false move and your entire cycle may have to be abandoned. I even remember a time we were meeting friends in the city for dinner. I set an alarm on my phone, had a shot in my bag in a cooler, and when my alarm went off, I excused myself and went to the bathroom and injected myself and then went back to dinner as if nothing happened. Our first IUI was nerve-wracking. I pinned all my hopes on it working since there really was nothing wrong with us. And the IUI enabled the male sample to be inserted exactly where the egg drops, so they didn't have to swim very far. The doctor came into the procedure and he was wearing a kippah. He was the perfect messenger for this miracle. And I thought all the stars were aligned. He did the procedure, I said my Tehillim, and then I had to do the hardest thing possible, wait for 2 weeks. The dreaded 2-week wait of trying to distract yourself from the what if and the twinges of, did I feel the embryo implant? Is my period coming again? Is a terrifying 2 weeks. After the 2 weeks, I came in for blood work at 5 a.m. and waited until 2 p.m. to hear from the nurse. I'm sorry, Ellie, it didn't work this time. I didn't understand. We did everything right. Why didn't it work? The doctor explained that they tried an IUI 3 times, and if it doesn't work, they'll move on to IVF. Great, it usually takes 3 times, so it'll happen on one of the next 2 tries, I rationalized. I didn't even think about IVF because I knew it would work. So a couple of days later, I went to the mikveh. The Gemara talks about the mikveh water signifying rebirth from a state of tumah. The impurity of a woman's nida is actually referred to as a whisper of death. Now I understand why. When I sat in the prep room, I realized that every month I had to go to the mikveh. It was because my body didn't give life. And it was a whisper, a small shot that it could have happened, but it didn't. My body had failed me in the past. Would this month be different? I sat in the prep room getting my mind set to have my own moment with Hashem and say, I guess you have a plan for me and I really trust in you, but please help me now. I tried this process twice more, and on the 3rd try I got the call. You're pregnant. Come back in 2 days and we will check your numbers. They're supposed to double within every 48 hours. I was thrilled. I called my husband, I got excited. It was right around my birthday, and I thought, what an amazing gift. So I came back 2 days later and they doubled. And then 2 days more, I got a call from my nurse. I'm sorry, Ellie, but your numbers didn't double like we like. It may be a miscarriage, but come back again tomorrow. Turned out it was a miscarriage, and I had to take a powerful shot that would force me to wait another 3 months before trying again. I asked the doctor if we were moving on to IVF. I just wanted to put this failure behind me and move on. It was my way of coping. But he said, no, it worked. You did get pregnant. It just didn't stick. Let's try again and we will see. Since I didn't need to see the doctor for 3 months, my husband and I decided we needed a vacation, so we went to Israel. And as luck would have it, I would have to go to the mikveh while we were in Eilat. The Eilat mikveh had a non-religious female taxi driver who, out of the goodness of her own heart, took women from their hotels to the mikveh. This was the grossest mikveh I have ever seen. The towels were scratchy, the place was dirty, but the mikveh woman and the taxi driver were angels from heaven. As I was about to immerse, I told her about trying to get pregnant and my recent miscarriage. She gave me a bracha that brought me to tears, and it is still the most meaningful mikveh experience I have ever had. And when we returned to New York, I had my IUI, and 9 months later, my son Jack, Yosef Yaakov, named for my grandfather and my uncle, was born via C-section. After the C-section, I asked my doctor how long I would have to wait before trying again. He said with my issues, he would suggest waiting 6 months to heal, then try for 3 months on my own. Maybe my body now knew how to get pregnant and we wouldn't need help. So when Jack was 6 months, we started trying on our own, but my body just didn't get it. By now I was living in New Jersey, so I wouldn't be able to take the train to the city at 5 a.m., and I needed to find a more local facility. At the suggestion of my OBGYN, I switched to a New Jersey practice and was placed with a random doctor. While reading her bio, I saw that she was Indian. Yikes, not a Jewish doctor. But she had trained at Cornell while I was trying to get pregnant with Jack, and that was good. So at our first meeting, we went over all my old records and became true partners in the process. We would go back to doing IUIs. I would wake up at 5:45, leave my quiet street in suburbia to get my blood and ultrasound, turn around, go home, say goodbye to my husband before he went to work, and spend the day with my Jack. Now, before having kids, I worked as a television producer for Martha Stewart, and as I'm sure you can imagine, you need all your ducks in a row when you go over your script with her. So I was trained to be an extremely diligent researcher. I leave no stone unturned. During my son's naps, I read every book on infertility, whether it be Eastern or Western medicine. And I would call my doctor to ask, what about this? What about that? I apologized for being the most annoying patient, but she appreciated the questions to challenge and change the protocols. In being my own advocate and failing at 2 more IUIs, I pushed her to do a blood test based on something that I read. And in fact, I had an insulin resistance. And insulin affects estrogen, which affects egg quality. So in addition to my shots, I was now taking some other medications. I got pregnant, but lost the baby shortly after. We were about to try our 3rd IUI when one of my father's friends, who's an OBGYN, asked, "Isn't your grandson a C-section baby? Maybe your daughter should have her tubes checked again to make sure that there is no scarring from her surgery." Thank goodness I have a big mouth and talk openly about my infertility, and gave my father permission to talk about my struggle with anyone, because as a result of that conversation, I had a procedure done again, which is a very painful experience, but they did find out that one of my tubes was blocked, which meant IUI wouldn't work, and that IVF was the way around one working tube. To allay my fears about IVF, because those 3 letters seemed so huge, my doctor told me that with IVF, they give you the same shots that I used with IUI, but in bigger doses. Everything is the same, except when the eggs look big enough, they put you out under anesthesia and physically remove every egg that is growing. Then they fertilize each egg with my husband's sperm. There was another question they wanted to know. For a mere $7,000 more, did I want to have the embryos genetically tested? I was 34 by now, trying to pay my mortgage, my insurance premium, $5,000 out of pocket for 1 cycle of fertility medications, and being frugally minded, I said, "No, I'm still young, let's save the money." So we went ahead with IVF. On the day of my egg retrieval, they were able to get 32 eggs. 18 of them did fertilize. Now I had to wait 5 days for the embryo to split, and on the 5th day, they would implant 2 in me. Great, I'm sure out of the 18 I could get 2. On day 5, I only had 5 embryos. I was really disappointed that so few made it, but 5 was better than none. They put 2 in and froze the rest for another time. I only had to wait 7 days for the pregnancy blood work, no 2-week wait. And when they called, "Congratulations, you're pregnant," I thought, IVF is truly a miracle. So I came in 2 days later to see my blood work, and it doubled. And I got to the point where they do an ultrasound to see if the sac was there, and it wasn't. Another miscarriage. I asked my doctor what happened. She said, "Maybe they were abnormal. Maybe your uterine lining is infected. I want to do a biopsy to check that." Great, I like answers. So another procedure, just a biopsy, and my lining was infected. So I went on antibiotics, and 2 weeks later they checked again, still infected. So I had a procedure to get rid of the infected area. Then we would do something called a frozen embryo transfer. Still shots and blood work and monitoring, but no anesthesia. And when they transferred the frozen embryos, it would be like an IUI. Great, been there, done that. My transfer was scheduled for the morning of Erev Yom Kippur, and I took this as a sign that it had to work, and it did. My husband and I decided that we didn't care about the blood numbers. We would only get excited when we saw a heartbeat. We'd been through too much disappointment. So the day they were supposed to look for the sac, they saw 2. I called my husband, and he calmly said, "Sometimes they both don't stick around, so calm down and wait for the heartbeats. We'll get excited then." So at week 8, we saw 2 heartbeats. I was so excited to go back at week 9 and then week 10. But at week 10, there was only 1 heartbeat, and at week 11, there was none. I didn't understand. How could Hashem give me twins and then take them away? Going to the mikveh after that was really tough. It was more than a whisper of death. It felt like a punch to the gut. I wanted to tell the mikveh lady so she could give me a bracha, but I couldn't get the words out. I was too depressed. They did a DNC to find out if anything was wrong with the babies. And that Friday night, I cried over my candles. I just didn't understand. Monday, I got the call that both babies each had a different genetic abnormality, and it was a bracha that I lost them this early in the game. Now I understood. Every Friday night at the candles, I davened for healthy babies. Hashem had listened, and he had a plan. At this point, I said to my husband, "I can't do this again. We need to find the $7,000 to genetically test the embryos before they get transferred, so I'm not going through this roller coaster of emotions." We also decided we absolutely did not want to know the gender of the embryos, since I personally needed some level of detachment in case I lost another pregnancy. You see, the twins I lost were a set of twin boys, and to this day, it is the hardest miscarriage to get over because I always think of the boys. So the money we needed to find out was not to choose a gender, but rather to ensure best success for implantation and survival. So we sat down with my parents to ask for a loan. My cycle didn't start for 2 months because of the miscarriage, so I needed something to occupy my time. I researched what increased fertility chances for success, and I did it all. I joined an online support community, which was an amazing space to ask questions from people who had been going through it for a while, and also newbies to the process. We understood each other's fears, and no question was a stupid one. We could be our unfiltered selves in this private space where no one questioned, why don't you have kids yet? Do you want a boy or a girl? Are your kids natural? And other seemingly harmless questions that are like daggers to the hearts of couples trying to conceive and trying to keep their infertility badge hidden from view. I also went to acupuncture, I changed my diet with a nutritionist, and I got every test taken for my blood to make sure I was clean and healthy. I wanted everything to be perfect. So it was 6 months after my first retrieval with the 32 eggs, and I was ready. But I only got 11 eggs. 11 were mature, and only 5 fertilized. In just 6 months, my fertility had diminished so, and I was really scared. Would I get one normal from this small batch? Yes, I got one. So I went for another retrieval the next month, and this time I got 2 normal embryos. I wanted to do another retrieval so I would have 4 normals in total. My doctor said, Ellie, it's time to put something back in. You're getting older. And I said, 1 more round. And I read about this other thing that may help my embryos make it to day 5. I know it's expensive, $2,000 for 5 days worth of medications, but let's go all in. And I promise I only need 1 more. So if I have 4 normals in total, you can put back in. So we did 1 more round with this other medicine I read about, my acupuncture, my online support group cheering me on, and I was feeling great. It was unbelievable. I had 11 embryos make it to day 5, and 9 of them were normal. So they quickly put 2 back in, and we waited. I was pregnant. 1 baby had dug its way in and stuck around. We had even graduated out of the fertility office to a regular OB. When I took my prenatal blood work, I got a call from the doctor. So it seems that you have CMV, a virus that isn't a problem unless you've never been exposed to it before pregnancy. And since after your twin miscarriage you took a blood panel, it showed that you had never been exposed. We've never seen such a clear-cut case of someone who contracted CMV for the first time while pregnant. So it was a good thing you got tested after that miscarriage, but unfortunately there is some risk with this pregnancy. The baby can be born with blindness, deafness, mental retardation, or stillborn. My first reaction was, are you kidding me? But after a couple of days I could rationalize it. Maybe this is why Hashem gave me a miscarriage before, so that we could find out that I never had the virus and we could treat it now for this baby. When it came to me dealing with infertility, I had to be very practical, scientific, and non-emotional, but that's just who I am. So I traveled to Manhattan, Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, consulted with doctors in Florida and Italy, and ended up having to sit for 6 hours in the hospital every month, taking an experimental medication that would hopefully pass through the placenta and help my baby. We would only know at 26 weeks if the baby was healthy by having an amnio. I was really scared. People would see me around town with my expanding belly and ask if I was expecting. Side note, never ask. With tears in my eyes, I said yes, but... And with the tefillos of the women in my community and the help of Hashem, the baby did not get the virus, and he was born via C-section and was perfect. Gabriel Asher, because without Hashem's strength, we would not have been able to do it. I wasn't done yet. Again, I asked my doctor how long I should wait before trying again, and he said, for me, 6 months. So at 7 months, I went back. I had the procedure to get a fresh lining like I had learned from the last time, and took a different shot to make sure my body would not make any eggs, since we were doing a frozen embryo transfer. My doctor asked if I preferred to put in a specific gender since they knew what they were based on the genetic testing. But I said I only want the best quality ones put in and don't tell me what they are. So she put 2 in and we waited. The blood test came back as pregnant. The numbers doubled. The ultrasound showed 2 sacs, but I had been there before. There were 2 heartbeats, but I had been there before. And at the 20-week anatomy scan, it really hit me. It really worked, and I was actually having twins. As I was sitting in the hospital getting ready for my scan, I had to fill out some paperwork. One of the questions hit me like a ton of bricks. How many times have you been pregnant? 6 times. How many live births have you had? 2. How many other women had to relive these miscarriages every time they fill out medical forms? Because of the bracha of being pregnant with these twins, I decided I needed to do something to help others, and I wanted to start a fertility support group in my own town. I put signs up in the mikvah, told a local Tehillim group for women davening to have children about it, and only 6 women responded, and many of them did not want to meet in a group setting, but rather just talk to me on the phone. I didn't care, as long as they had someone to talk to. Our husbands are our partners, but sometimes they don't get it, since they are not the one whose body is going through it. In speaking to others, we can learn so much, and can sometimes save time and feel secure. 2 weeks before Pesach, my newest miracles arrived. Adela, whose Hebrew name is Fega Fruma, and Nady, who is Yonatan Simcha. She was named for my grandmother Fega and my husband Savta Fruma, and Yonatan Simcha, well, Hashem truly gave us happiness. It's an emotional roller coaster, and it's an extremely expensive proposition even with insurance. Parents worry about paying yeshiva tuition, but you should know that my son Gabriel cost me 3 years of yeshiva tuition out of pocket before he was even born, and we had insurance. It's a long and intricate process, all of which needs financial and emotional support. Once again, I thank you for giving me the forum to inform those who may not have realized the ins and outs of the different avenues one may go through to achieve a family. I hope that we can all be better friends and sources of comfort to those who outwardly and secretly need it. Yesh Tikva's website provides a Jewish fertility community for those who want to ask questions, join forums, and get support anonymously. We have a program called Fertility Friends, where a social worker pairs you up with either a fertility veteran or someone traveling the journey at the same time you are, so you have a buddy to go through the process step by step. There's a lot of information on what to expect through the process and blogs of various couples' stories. For the past 2 years, we have had an infertility awareness Shabbat where over 130 synagogues in the US, Canada, and Australia dedicate a sermon before Pesach in order to remember to be sensitive to those without children when entering a holiday that is all about V'yigadata lebincha, telling over the story to your children. And most recently, we sent out a fertility prayer to be said by the congregation to pray for those still struggling, and many said it before the Kol Na'arim Aliyah on Simchat Torah. Please feel free to check us out and tell those who you think may benefit. The more we know, the better we can be. Thank you, and Tizku L'Mitzvot.